Good morning, students. Am I audible?
Good morning, ma'am.
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you. So today we will start with the next part of the syllabus. Module number 2 in your syllabus is on computer organization and architecture, where we are going to see the basic concepts for COA, and then we will start with 8086 microprocessor. This is very important chapter, takes major part or contribution in your syllabus, and all your remaining experiments will be based on this chapter only. As you know, in MPL we have finished total 4 experiments and 8 are pending. So your next 8 experiments will be on 8086 microprocessor. So in this chapter, basically we are going to start with basic COA concepts, 8086 architecture, and then we will go for programming, assembly language programming. So this is the new thing that you are going to learn this time, how to write the instructions and how to write simple programs in assembly language. Also, we will see how to execute the program in one software. So I'll start this chapter. I'll share my slides here. Okay, I think the slides are visible to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, fine. So this chapter title or name of the chapter is Overview of Computer Organization, Architecture and Organization. And as we know, what is the course outcome? So course outcome of this chapter is students should be able to describe basic organization of computer, architecture for 8086 microprocessor, and implement assembly language programming for 8086 microprocessor. So at the end of this chapter, once you learn all these things, so what is expected is you should be able to describe what is exactly a part of computer organization and architecture. You should be able to tell me about what is the architecture for 8086, how to write simple programs in assembly language programming, what are the different types of instructions and how to write instructions. Everything you should be able to learn at the end of this chapter. So from this chapter, right now, we are going to concentrate on the first part, that is basic organization of computer and what is the difference in organization and architecture. So content for the first part of this chapter is introduction of computer organization and architecture. What do you exactly mean by organization and architecture? Then we will talk about the basic organization of computer and block level description of functional unit. Then we will talk about the von Neumann model and how the computers are evolution of computers are there. So this evolution part you can surf and see. I'm not adding any much more content here in the slides. And then the performance measure of computer architecture. If I want to say that my computer, whichever architecture I'm following with, how I can give the measurement factors, what are the factors which are going to affect or which are going to decide the performance of my computer architecture. So that part we will see. And there is one concept used in parallel processing, which is designed or invented by Amdahl. So the name of this scientist who has evolved this concept, and the law is named after his name, that is Amdahl's law. This part we are going to see in today's lecture. So to start with the first part, computer organization and architecture. Normally asked question in Viva as well as on your MCQ or even in the paper. What do you mean by exactly computer organization and architecture? And what are the different examples that you can give in these two categories? Because we know when I call this is a computer that I'm using, but some part of that computer is considered as a part of organization, whereas some part is considered as a architecture. So what exactly these two terms means, that part we are going to see now. See here, computer architecture refers to those attributes of a system that have direct impact on logical execution of a program. See, I repeat it, those attributes of a system that have direct impact on logical execution of a program. So when I'm going to use my computer, some part of it I'm going to definitely use for writing some programs, or maybe representing some kind of data. I'm giving some input, I'm handling some kinds of operations with the help of input output media. I'm going to use some of the memory techniques where I can store my memory and everything. So all these things are considered here as a part of architecture. So what are the examples of it is instruction set. Like whichever programming language I'm referring, I need to follow some part of instruction, whether it is Java, it is C, C++, or it is assembly language. So the instructions set is the major part with which any programmer can access your computer, any kind of programming language. Next in the example is the number of bits used to represent various data types. As you know, when I'm going to handle various kinds of data, it depends that which kind of data type I'm going to use for that program. Next thing is IO mechanism. IO mechanism is basically going to give you the connection ways for your various input and output devices. Just imagine if there is no mechanism other than just connecting your keyboard and mouse, or keyboard, mouse, and only monitor. You could not have used your computer system or in any desktop system for any higher end application. You are provided with various USB connectors. You are provided with various serial and parallel port connectors with which you can go on connecting various devices to it. So this is the mechanism which is giving the part of your architecture. And then next is memory addressing techniques. How exactly, which kind of memory inside your computer is used and how it is used. I say that I'm connecting my pen drive. I say that I'm connecting my USB hard drive to my laptop, to my computer. But internally, how this USB is getting detected, how my data is getting retrieved from that drive. So that all part comes under your memory addressing techniques. So these are going to basically form the computer architecture. Instruction set to write instruction, the number of bits used to represent various data types, different kinds of IO mechanism, and various memory addressing techniques. These all are forming the attributes which are going to have direct impact on logical execution of a program, which is forming computer architecture. Next year we will go for computer organization. Organization refers to operational units and their interconnections that realize the architectural specification. Now just imagine that I am going to have various IO devices connected there. I'm going to have various memory devices connected there. Maybe it is a hard drive, maybe it is a CD drive, or it can be any kind of DVD. It can be any USB drive. But if internally there is no interconnection in between that devices, then there is no use of these devices connections. The extra peripherals, whichever you are going to connect there, that must be getting detected properly. So for that, which is the major part for me, is the control signal. Because if there is no proper generation of control signals, then it is very difficult to get detection of all these peripheral devices, and you cannot have access to all these devices. Then interfaces between computer and peripherals. As I said, I'm going to have various hard drives, USB drives, but if any of the drive is not getting detected by my laptop or my desktop machine, then there is no use of that. So there should be a proper interface between computer and various peripherals. Same way, the memory technology being used. Now you can see the various old version computers, desktop machines are there. And then if you are going to put the advanced or the latest RAM inside that, it will not get detected to that, because that machines were designed, that motherboards were designed as per the specifications that time it was available. So it's an old machine, That is, before 10 years ago, I have purchased something and now I want to just upgrade it by putting some advanced memory devices. So many times it is not possible that it will detect it because it is not compatible. So you have to take care of which are the devices are there. So internally, all these parts are the part of your computer organization. See, one line example is given here. The multiply instruction is available is the computer architecture, and how multiply is implemented is computer organization issue. Like I'm giving two numbers, integer numbers, and I'm applying multiply instruction. So this multiply instruction is a part of your computer or architecture. But how this multiplication internally take place by your processor, what processor, which kind of signals it will generate over there, the control signals, and which kind of memory devices it will use to keep your data. So all these things are the part of your computer organization issue. So this is the major part forming the different examples for organization and architecture. See the next part, computer organization. In simple way, the earlier one, these are the book definitions by William Stallings. This William Stallings book I have already uploaded on Moodle. So you can refer that for this one. Second one, computer organization. In simple terms, if I want to remember it or I want to understand it. So computer organization, it encompasses all physical aspects of computer system. Physical aspects are available in terms of circuit design, control signals, and memory types. Computer organization in one line is going to define how does computer work. So how does computer work is the answer for your computer organization. When I go for computer architecture, this is logical aspects of system implementation as seen by the programmer. For example, instruction set, instruction formats, data types, addressing modes, etc. So in one line, if I want to say, it is how do I design a computer? That is going to form your computer architecture. I hope you are going to understand these two concepts, organization and architecture. Any doubts on this, please ask. Else we will proceed. One more diagram is giving you here explanation for organization and architecture. Where I use any kind of desktop machine or any laptop machine, the central block here, these are the various ellipse shown here. So these are going to give you what exactly your computer system is giving you. At my side, at high level end, at user side, I'm applying or I'm working with application programs. Below that, we have application design, system design, computer design. In fine way, if I go, I'll go for logic design. In fine way, I'll go for circuit design, and basic component or low level component is various computer components. So like computer components, you have seen the first experiment, the motherboard, various kinds of connectors, resistors, capacitors, ICs. These all are going to form your computer components. Using that, you are going to design the circuit. That circuit, based on some kind of logic design, you are going to design it. Like the Boolean algebra equation we have seen. If I'm going for half adder, I have some logic design. For that, I go for circuit design. And whichever ICs or whichever components I'm using to implement that, like logic gates, that are forming my basic components. So this part is divided into two parts. From computer design till the computer component, you have the hardware part. And from system design till application program, you have software part. Like once my hardware part of computer is ready, the next part is I'm going to think about which operating system I want to work with. And then based on that, I'll go for installation of that operating system. Then I will think on which are the application programs that I will be working on. And then I'll go for this. So at higher side, you can find this application programs. Again, if I want to divide it in terms of organization and architecture, so you can clearly see here the left hand side part of the diagram. Computer organization is forming all this part from design till your computer component, whereas your computer architecture is giving you how exactly the logic design is there. When I'm designing or working with operating system, the operating system will take care of internally how exactly this various peripheral device managements can be done. You are studying operating system right now, one of the subject, so that all things are going to take care of your computer architecture. So this way you can bifurcate your computer in terms of hardware and software, whereas high level and low level aids for organization and architecture. One more simple way to understand this is computer organization. The way hardware components are connected to form the computer system. It's known as your organization. Whereas architecture is structure and behavior of various functional units of your computer and their interactions. So like this, finally you can conclude the computer organization and architecture. What is the exact difference in these two? And various examples on the second slide I have already listed there. So in your paper you may get question. MCQ में तो है, आपको MCQ में options available रहते हैं. But when you see the question in the paper, normally a fixed question is asked in the paper for 5 marks, like differentiate in computer organization and architecture, giving examples. Or what do you mean by computer organization and architecture, and give or justify with your examples. So these are various examples listed, and these 4-5 slides will give the answer for this kind of questions. Fine. If any doubt is there, please ask me. Else I will proceed with the next part. If no doubt, at least you reply no in the chat box. I'll come to know your life there. Okay, Shubham, Steve, Anurag, clear. Okay, thank you for your reply. Fine, now we'll go for the next part here. Structural and functional view of your computer system. Now see, we all are using computer or any kind of desktop, laptop machine. And for last 1 year, so we are compulsory using, everybody is using that. So if I say that I want to identify the structural view of my computer system, or I want to check about the functions of my computer system. So what do you think, what can be the answer for this? In terms of structure, what do you think? And in terms of function, what do you think? Just take the time and think on this and please reply. What do you think that this is the structure and this is the function of my computer system? Either you type your answer in chat box, or you can, anyone can unmute and answer this. First, we will think about the structural view. You everyone know answer for this. Just I want to get it from you. When I read this slide title, what are the things coming in my mind? You just reply that. It may not be a technical definition or technical thing, but whatever thing, when I read this term or read this title on the slide, which are the things coming in my mind? I want that. So everybody take a time and think on it and answer. I'm waiting for your reply. Okay, one answer I'm getting. 64-bit architecture. Directly you are going for 64-bit architecture. Very good. Input output functions. Okay, Krishna. Next. Only 2 people are getting some things in their mind. Others are waiting for their friend's answer. Memory. Memory management. Okay. Next. I repeat my question by reading the title on the slide. Which are the things coming in your mind? I want answer on that. Okay, Anurag is saying connections in system. Very good. Shubham saying components. Okay. CPU, ALU. Okay. Next. Very good. Now you are going at finer level. Fine. IO, process control. Very good. Operating system. Okay. Computer peripherals. Okay. Then structure, exterior and functional. The internal operations of CPU, IO. Okay, Prarthana. Motherboard. Okay. Any more answers? Now just go through the reply. Okay, Mitesh is saying control unit. Okay. System bus. Fine. Now see whatever 10, 15 answers are here in the chat box, all are your correct answers. So when I say the structural and functional view, I always talk about somewhere what are the components which are forming my computer system and what are the functions they are giving you. So whatever answers are here, maybe 10, 15 answers are there here. So they all are exactly divided into these two. That is structural or functional view of a computer system. That is our next part of study. I'll just go through here. I'll not go line by line the components on this slide, but afterwards you can read it. In short, what I can tell you is at every level, the designer is concerned with the structure, the way your components are interrelated, and the function, the operation of each individual component as a part of structure. Like you should think about when I'm going to design or when I'm going to see my any computer system. What I'm concerned about, what is the structure, how the components are connected or interrelated, and what is the function it can give me. So in terms of levels, if I can go, I can describe this from top down or bottom of level. Any kind of level I'll go with, we'll see here. In terms of functions, what I'm expecting is I'm going to use my system for handling various kind of data and data processing operations. So when I'm going to handle it for data processing, you are going to work with various types of data in terms of data types, in terms of data size, and in terms of your size of data, you require the data storage over there. So it can be a short or it can be a long-term storage, it can be a temporary storage. So these two functions I'm basically expecting, that my data storage facility must be there, data processing must be there. And next thing what I require is data movement, because I may require the data should be sent over the various devices or over the communication lines. So data movement with the help of IO devices either, or it can be over data communication link with the help of my any LAN or WAN connection. Then talking about the control signals. I know that I want to handle the data, I want to send the data, I want to process the data. But how this operation takes place? With the help of various control signals. So for control signals, I need to know how I can instruct computer system and how I can instruct that with the help of various programs. And that programs can be written in either low level, middle level or high level languages. Then data type operations, various types of data types of operations are there depending on what is the purpose of your operation. Based on that, you can have it. You can imagine a diagram like this. You have a control mechanism, which is the central part of this diagram, and then you require data movement, you require data storage, and you require data processing. So a functional view, when I say I'm expecting these operations should be done by my computer system. Over the communication lines, I can go for any kind of LAN or WAN connection. This is my computer providing me storage and processing, and various peripherals are connected, and various communication lines can be connected with that. In terms of simple view as a structure of my system, how I can see that storage I require, processing, peripherals, and communication line. So internally to do all these things, if I see the computer system, what I am going to have there, I require central processing unit, one of your answer given by one some student. I require memory devices to store my data. I require IO devices for IO connection with external environment. And I require system interconnection. So this diagram is showing you that. This is computer and I have this internal part of my computer. Then internal structure just now, this is the part we have seen. IO, main memory, system interconnection and central processing unit. Then the major part is forming your CPU, central processing unit. Internally, what is it is going to have internally inside your processor, any kind of microprocessor, you are going to have control unit, arithmetic and logic unit. You require different registers, which are your temporary memory locations to work with your various types of data. And to have connection in between these three, you have internal CPU interconnection structures. So this is internally when I'm going to expand, or I'm going for top to bottom view. So from CPU, these are the internal components which are going to form it. Again, inside the CPU, register, ALU, just now we have seen this control unit is our part of interest. So this control unit, how it works, it requires sequential logic, it requires control memory, and it requires control registers and decoders. Control memory is required to keep internally the data that you are going to work with. Sequential logic is going to decide the sequence of instruction, how it is executing. Because just imagine you have written some 10 lines of program, and when your processor is working, if it will directly work randomly on this 10 lines of program, you will never get correct output. So there should be a proper sequential logic which is going to work for this execution of line by line instructions. And then you require various registers, temporary registers, to keep the data of your program. Got it? So how I can see my different structural and functional view of computer. Now when your CPU is ready, then after that you will be thinking about the system softwares and application software, as you have given the answer like operating system. So once the system is ready with me with the hardware part, I will think on which operating system I want to work with, and then further I can go for various application softwares. Fine. Then next very important part of this chapter is your first model, which is giving the concept of stored program memory, that is known as von Neumann model. Again, the important part in the paper also, or in Viva questions also, about the von Neumann model. This is the person who has designed this model with the first time the concept of storage program. Like before that, there was no concept of using temporary memory also for working with the program. So this is going to give you the first time your data as well as instructions of the program can be stored somewhere. So this model is also known as stored program concept, invented by von Neumann. Here, the main memory is used for storing your program and your data. ALU operating on your binary data, we know your computer always work with, whichever internally it will work with the binary format only. So your ALU, the arithmetic logic unit of your CPU, will work on that. Control unit is used for interpreting instructions from memory and execution of it. Input and output devices are used for giving the data or getting the output, which are operated here by the control unit. And then After this von Neumann concept, after the basic model, there is the Princeton Institute for Advanced Studies come up with a new model in 1952, which is known as IAS, Institute of for Advanced Studies, IAS. And this is first time giving you the concept of stored program as well as various kinds of internal registers. Like this, you can imagine the basic diagram of any computer system. The central processing unit CPU is shown here. CPU is just showing here the major two components only. First is arithmetic logic unit and second is program control unit. And these two units are the major part of your CPU. Then your program and data stored somewhere inside the main memory, which is connected here. And you have various IO devices, input and output devices. So this is the basic model for any computer system. And after that, there are some advancement made, and then you can have the various structures which are based on this basic one. The new structures right now available with your various computer systems. After that, as I said, IAS has come. It is also working with the binary number. It works with 2 cross 20-bit instructions, and various registers are used there internally. The names of registers are memory buffer register, memory address register, instruction register, instruction buffer register, program counter, accumulator, and multiplier and quotient. So a new diagram here you can see here. I hope this diagram is visible. This is again the content is referred from William Stalling book. You can refer that for these diagrams in detail. So this diagram is showing you two parts are there. One is ALU. ALU is formed with AC accumulator, NQ is multiplier and quotient, arithmetic logic instructions and circuits are there, and they are going to work with memory buffer register. Second one, you have program control unit, which is going to have control signals or generation of control signals with the help of control circuits. Here you have IR. IR is the register. This is instruction register, which is going to store the operation code of instruction. In the next chapter, we are going to see all these things in detail. Right now, just for your understanding, I'll just tell you what these instruction registers are used for. This is the main memory where you are going to store your program. Simple way I'll say right now, if you are going to write one program with storing with .c instruction, for example, your C or C++ program. So that program is stored inside your main memory. Your processor will always access main memory and take the program from that. How it will take? It has to first find out where the program is located. That is given by memory address register. Because you know the main memory size is very large. You're using 4K, 8K or 16K memory also. So in that case, what is the exact location of your data that it is going to take? Memory address register. After that, it will find out which is the instruction you want to run with, like whether it is addition or subtraction instruction. For example, it will load that operation code in IR register, and then the control circuit will generate the respective signals. Now, once one instruction is loaded, taken for execution, program should be going for the next instruction. So that is the job of your program counter, PC. Program counter is going to always increment by 1 to denote to next instruction in the sequence. If your program is of 10 lines, initially it will start from the first line. Then once the first line is sent for execution, PC get incremented by 1 and it will load or denote to the second line of the program. This part is done as an implicit operation. User or programmer need not write any special instruction for that. Internally, your processor will take care of it. And then whichever operation data you are sending here, it comes in the memory buffer. Like I'm having two numbers, 10 and 20. I'm giving the instruction for addition. So after 10 plus 20, I'm going to get somewhere result in AC. If I'm going for multiplication or division operation, I'm going to get results somewhere in M and Q. And then it can be shown for user with the help of IO equipments. Like on this, the display device, I'm going to show the result of my program. So I can see over there. So this is the structure introduced based on your von Neumann model with the help of the main memory used to keep the data. This is known as stored program concept. Got it? Any doubts here? Okay, if no doubt, we'll go for the next part now. Next goes with the interconnection structures. Now we got that computer and internal components are there. But if they are not connected properly, you will not get the proper interrelation operations. And then your execution of program will not happen. So for that, the major component inside your any system is interconnection structures. Like this, you can imagine the basic modules of your computer system. I'm going to have CPU, central processing unit, the major part. Every processor or every computer will have it. Then I'm going to have IO devices. So I have IO module here. And I'm going to use some kind of memory. So I require memory module. Now, when this CPU, IO, and memory modules are there, they should be properly connected with each other so that you will get the proper execution of the program or any desired operation that you are working with. So, for that, what are the different control signals required or what are the different signals needed to execute these modules properly? They are shown here. For CPU, it requires instructions, it requires data, and it requires interrupt signals. Output is given here by CPU in terms of addresses, again the control signal generation and data, because CPU will take data, operate on it, and it will give you the data only, the answer in terms of your whichever data type you are using there. Similarly, when I'm going for IO module, I'm going to connect IO devices. So if I'm going to connect keyboard as an input device and somewhere the monitor display as an output device. So what I need is it should properly read the data. Like on the keyboard, I'm typing something and my processor is not accepting it. There is no use of it. If the processor is sending something to display on the display device and you are not able to see that, it is of no use. So basically it requires read and write signal. Then it requires the addresses. Addresses in terms of where exactly the data you want to read, that you want to keep, or where exactly the data you want to write. That is the exact address locations of your data that you want to handle there. And then it works with various internal as well as external data. Again, it will also require the interrupt signals. Like some operation is going on and I want to stop that operation. I want to create some interrupt over there. So that is available with the help of IO devices. So that interrupt signals are there. Next module you have the memory. Again, in memory, I can save my data. And I can retrieve the data. So I require read and write signal. Reading is to retrieve the data. Writing is to copy the data or save the data on your memory devices. Again, you require here data, address, and data content. So this is data and address, two connections are shown. Output from memory you are going to get is with the help of data that you are going to retrieve there. So these are various computer modules you have. And for that you require various interconnection structures. So these all units must be connected with each other properly. Different types of connections you require is memory, input output, and CPU. Memory you require to receive and send the data. It receives addresses of locations and it receives the control signals in terms of read, write, and this timing is there. Timing means every computer device works with clock signal. You have to provide a particular frequency, a clock signal. It is a square wave. Based on that only, it is going to operate and do the read and write operation. Similarly, for I/O devices, we know for what purpose we are using it. Output, it receives the data from computer, it sends the data to peripheral device. Peripheral device can be output, it can be a printer, it can be a monitor. For input, it receives data from peripheral. Like through keyboard, you are going to get the data and then it sends data to computer. Exact opposite operation. Same thing is written here. I/O requires, it receives the control signal from computer and send the control signal to peripheral devices. Like if I'm going to get the data from hard disk, I want to read it. Definitely I'm going to go like you on your hard disk, if you have C, D and E drive and you are going to search for some file, what you do, I know that it is on the D drive. So I'll go and click on that drive. I'll try to open the folder. I'll try to get that file from that folder. So all these operations, you are going to send various control signals to the peripherals. Next one, you are going to receive the addresses from the computer, that is the port numbers to identify peripherals. What do you mean by this? See, when you are going to connect various devices, there are various ports on your motherboard. So if I have 2 or 3 USB ports, on which port I am going to connect my keyboard, on which port I am going to connect my USB drive. So that port numbers are very important. Through that only it is going to identify the device. And it will send the interrupt signals whenever necessary. From CPU, what is the operation you require? It will read the instruction and data, write the data after processing, sends the control signal to other unit, and receives or act on the interrupts. If any interrupt is generated, it will go and solve the interrupt. For this interconnections, you require memory to processor, processor to memory, I/O devices to processor, similarly processor to I/O devices or to memory. So for that, the interconnection structures are required. That interconnection structures here are known as buses. There are various number of possible interconnection systems are there. Single or multiple bus structures are most common. These bus structures can be known as control bus, address bus, and data bus. For your PC, any kind of computer system, you can think of it. Or it can be unibus, it can be multiple bus structures. I'll show you some diagrams. Actually, again, this part is not in detail for your study. You should just know the control, address, and data bus, which we are going to use in 8086 processor also. So what do you mean by this bus? It is a communication pathway connecting 2 or more devices. Usually it is broadcast. When it is grouped, it is often grouped and we call it in terms of how many bits are grouped together. So for example, I can call it 32-bit data bus. When I am going to name it like 32-bit data bus, what it means, it has 32 separate single bit channels. It can carry 32-bit data at a time. That's why it is known as the name with the number of bits that you are going to use there. Like this bus interconnection structure, you can imagine. Just see this diagram. You have central processing unit, you have various memory devices connected, and you have various I/O devices connected. These things are mainly, these 3 modules are interconnected with the help of, first is control signals, second is address lines, and third one is with the help of data lines. And all these 3 things are known as a bus, whatever structure is shown there. So what is the size of it? It depends on your size of central processing unit. It depends on the size of microprocessor that you are going to use. If your microprocessor is just supporting 8-bit operations, your data line size will be 8-bit only. If it is supporting 16-bit operation, the size of data line will be 16 bits only. It depends on the microprocessor's features or architecture. Data bus always carry data, only data. There is no difference in terms of data and instruction at this level. Like if I am writing instruction add A comma B, I'm telling go for addition of these two. So A and B here are your data and add is your instruction, but both these things are carried by the database. Width is the key determinant of performance. Depends 8-bit, 16-bit, 32, 64-bit, etc. Depends on the size of microprocessor. Next one you have address bus. It identifies source or destination of the data. Where exactly you want to send this particular data. Address is very important. CPU needs to read an instruction or data from the given location in the memory. Bus width determines maximum memory capacity of the system. For example, a processor 8080, this number is for the processor. It has 16-bit address bus giving 64K address space. This 64 bits, 2 raised to 16 it will be doing, and it will be providing you 64 kilobytes address bus can be addressed there. In the next lecture for 8086, we will study this part in detail. And then next one, you have the control bus, which are the different control signals. They are listed here, which are carried by your control bus. Control signals listed here are memory read and write signal, input output devices read and write signal. There can be acknowledgement or transfer signal, bus request and grant signal, interrupt request or interrupt acknowledgement signal, clock and reset. All these signals are considered as your control signals. So these three types of buses are available in all computer system. Whenever you're going to work with any microprocessor, it gives you the bifurcation like data bus, control bus and address bus. Here it is the same thing written. When you want to address or you want to get the data, you want to send the data from one module to another, how it takes place. It should first obtain the use of bus and it will transfer the data via the bus. If one module wishes to request data, it must first obtain the use of the bus. What it means, whatever things are listed here. In short, I will tell you. When this transfer of data from one module to another is there, what happens? Every module should have the access on the bus. For example, right now, just see, when I am conducting this lecture, from my side, I am delivering and you all are just listening to it. But maybe one of the student want to ask some doubt. So for that, what he should do, he or she should do, that should ask me, ma'am, we have a doubt, I want to ask one question. So that is requesting for access of the bus. Right? It depends on the processor whether to grant it or not. Like it depends on me whether I will give permission for that student. Okay, you go ahead, you ask your doubt. Or I may say that no, you wait for some time, you ask your doubt at the end because processor is busy in some other work. But the request and grant should be there from processor to all kinds of peripheral devices. So that things are listed here. Got it? What are the different kinds of bus structures or interconnection structures? Any doubts here? Please ask. These slides I will be posting on Moodle after lecture. Just go through that. Simple basic part is there. Just revise the things and you will understand it clearly. There is no difficult part in this one. Any doubt? If no doubt, reply no in the chat box. Okay, Shubham, no doubt. Fine. Fine. Then next very important part is how you measure the performance of any computer system or any computer architecture. So these are performance measure factors for computer architecture. Just read line by line. These are the parameters which are used to measure the performance. Which are they? Sequential execution time, parallel execution time, speed up, efficiency, clocks per instruction, also known as CPI, millions instructions per second, known as MIPS, million floating point instructions per second, known as MFLOPS, throughput, and scalability. These are various major parameters. Other than this also there can be various parameters, but these are the major one which are going to contribute to measure the performance of any computer architecture. What is the meaning of all these factors? One by one we'll see here. First is, what do you mean by computer performance? Computer performance is amount of work accomplished by a computer system. The word performance in computer performance means how well a computer is doing the work and it is supposed to do. So if I am working with my laptop system and it is not opening any application properly, I will say my computer or my laptop is not performing well. So whatever work it is supposed to do, how well it is performing, based on that I will decide the computer performance. The major parameters I can use here is the response time, the throughput, and execution time. What it means? Like I'm working on my laptop machine, I'm opening one application and I'm just waiting. Even that simple Internet Explorer, or I may say it is not opening even my MS Word application, and the response time is very large and I'm just keeping waiting. I'll say that it is not working properly. Throughput, I'm going to use it for various tasks. So what are the n number of tasks it will complete in the specified time? Based on that, I will decide. And execution time, how much time it takes to execute any kind of application or any program. Based on that, I will decide. So these are the basic three components. And earlier 9 that I showed are overall components that I'm going to use here. What it means, one by one we'll see here. Response time is the time from start to completion of the task. This also includes operating system overhead, waiting for I/O and other processes, accessing disk and memory, and time spent execution on CPU, or it is also known as execution time. You all know how much response time it is taking. Based on that, you will calculate it. Next is sequential execution time. It is the time required for a program to be executed on a uniprocessor system. If I'm going to work with a single processor system, which is the normal case with all of us, we are working with uniprocessor system. So whatever time it is taking is known as a sequential execution time, and it is denoted like this, T of 1. Like this it is denoted. When I'm working for parallel processor system, the time taken for execution of any program, it is known as parallel execution time. Because I'm going to work with n parallel processes, the task will be divided among the n processes and they are going to complete it and give me the result. So it is denoted as T of n. Our case is the sequential execution time. But when you are working with parallel processor system, it is known as T of n. Next term here is throughput. It is the total amount of work done in a given time. Like for example, for today's 1 hour lecture, if your teacher is planning to complete something, and if it is getting completed, I may say that I have achieved 100% throughput for that particular time. But if I have planned something, 10 slides, for example, and I'm just completing only 5 slides in that specified time, then my throughput is decreased. It is not increased. So that is the amount of total work which is supposed to be completed in the given time. Next term you have is CPU execution time. It is the total time CPU spends computing on a given task. It also exclude time for IO or running other programs. This is also referred to as simply CPU time. Like I'm running one program in C, C++, or Java or Python, and I'm running the program and I'm waiting for the output. So whatever time is taken, it can be microsecond, milliseconds, it can be seconds, and it can be in minutes also for some kinds of complex programs. So that is your CPU execution time. Next concept you have is speed up. Speed up is the ratio of speed of parallel system to that of sequential system. Like if I'm working with uniprocessor, I'm happy with T of 1. When I'm working with T of n processors, I'm having T of n. So in that case, I will be counting. Like what is the exact ratio it is giving me if I'm going to work with parallel system to that of sequential system. Like I'm working on a sequential system and I'm running a program. It might be taking some milliseconds. But the same task when I am going to run on n parallel processor, it is completing in microseconds. So that ratio is going to decide your speed up factor. Next one you have efficiency. Efficiency is the ratio of actual speed up obtained by a system to that of ideal speed up that should be achieved according to number of processors in parallel system. Like efficiency in terms of what I can say, like for example, if I'm giving some task to your class, if you have 60 or 70 students in the class and I'm distributing some work to you, so I'm going to find out the ideal speed. If I have designed some ideal time for you that you should be completing this task in 1 hour, maybe all are doing the same work or all are doing different work, depends on what task I'm giving you. So ideally I'm expecting that you should complete it in 1 hour, but you might take 2 hours to complete or you might take half an hour to complete. So it depends on the time that you will take, and ratio of that is known as the efficiency. Then you have clocks per instruction, CPI. CPI is the ratio of clock cycles required for a program to the number of instructions in the program. So what this means, your all processors or all electronic devices works with a clock signal. Your processor works with some particular frequency of clock, and with that square wave it works whether to perform the task in that wave particular time or not. It depends on which processor you are working. Now it is if I am running a program which has some 20 instructions in the program, and for running one instruction, it is taking some 3 clock cycle, for example. So 3 multiplied by 20 will be your 60 answer. So that are the clock cycles taken by your program for that particular instruction. So it is the ratio of total clock cycles required to that of number of instructions in the program. When I'm going to count it in millions, it is known as MIPS, million instructions per second. For example, I may say that a system has 5 MIPS. It means that it can execute 5 million instructions in a second. Million instructions per second. In 1 second, how many million instructions it can execute will decide this factor, MIPS. Same way you have floating point instructions. Now sometimes it happens that there are special arithmetic processes used to work on floating point instructions. So this concept is exactly same. Only thing, instead of simple instructions, it will be working on floating point instructions. And how many instructions, how million floating point instructions it will complete in 1 second will decide this factor. Next factor you have is scalability. Scalability is a parallel system is said to be scalable if the same efficiency is obtained by increasing number of processes. When I'm working with in a particular system and I want to increase it, right now maybe, for example, if I have designed some LAN network and it is working for 10 machines properly, some intranet for my college, for example, and it is working for some 50 machines right now. If I'm going to add some more 5 machines and still it is working, that means your design intranet system is working properly. It is scalable up to next 5 machines. After 5 machines, I may add more 5 machines and I will check whether it is working properly or not. So that means you are increasing the number of machines or number of processes in that intranet or whatever LAN system you have designed. So that is going to decide your scalability of a system. Next one you have is performance. It is determined by execution time, as performance is inversely proportional to execution time. You can write down like this: performance is equal to 1 divided by execution time. What it means? Like for example, when we were solving the first chapter examples, what we did, I'm giving you the question and you are solving in your notebook and you are replying back. When you are replying immediately, I may say that performance is high because you are completing your task in very less time. But for some examples, if you are taking more and more time, that means your performance is less. So it depends on your execution time and it is inversely proportional to the execution time. Got it? These are various concepts which are used for measuring your performance of a system. Maybe a short note type question on this, or maybe in your MCQ also you will get questions on this. Just read out what are these factors are there. Actually, these factors we are just listing here one line. But when you are going to study the parallel processor system, distributed system, then there on every factor which is listed here will be in detail, will be one module. What do you mean by scalability and how you can measure the scalability, how you can increase the scalability of any distributed system or parallel system, like that is there. For our case, we just need to know these concepts and what exactly is the basic definitions for all this. And then coming to the last point for today's lecture, Amdahl's law. Now this Amdahl's law is basically invented by Amdahl and it is talking about the parallel processor system. What exactly this law is, see here. It is named after the computer science scientist Jan Amdahl. It was presented at AFIPS, Spring Count Computer Conference in 1967, also known as Amdahl's argument. It is the formula which gives the theoretical speed up in latency of execution of a task at fixed workload that can be expected of a system whose resources are improved. A big line is there. What exactly it means, I will tell you. This is used basically for theoretical speed up. How you can speed up a working of n processor system, it is talking about. In other words, it is the formula used to find maximum improvement possible by just improving a particular part of a system. What it means, see here. I'll give you a class example only. Now suppose for your 4 experiment, I have given some deadline and I'm expecting that all students will complete that. And once you complete that 4 assignments, then only, or 4 experiment submission, then only I'm going to start the 5th one. This is the case. For example, if I'm considering this kind of some condition there, that as you are going to finish first 4 submission, then only I can start the 5th one. In that case, what is happening? The 50% of the class have already submitted. So they are very speed up operations are there. Performance is very high. So you are 70 processors working on the same task. From that, 35 processors have already done their task. Maybe another 25% will do the task 5 days late or 2 days late. Still, I'm waiting for you. So performance is there, but it is very poor performance. And maybe last 25% are again very poor in performance and they are not completing the task. So I am just having a waiting time. So the 35 students who completed the task, they are just sitting idle. They are just waiting when this remaining will complete and ma'am will start the next experiment. So what is happening in this case? Even though 50% of the class has completed the task, your new work cannot be started because the processor has some condition. So 50% processors are working, but 50% are not working up to mark. So there is a chance of improvement in that remaining 50%. From that, 25% are okay. They are doing up to their 50% of performance, but still 50% chance is there, and I'm trying to improve them. Maybe these remaining processors will also contribute to them. Like this, 35 students are bored with just a waiting time. So what they will do, जिनका नहीं हुआ है, they will ask, what is the difficulty you are facing? You do this, you do that, and you finish your submission. Unnecessarily, we are at waiting time. Then once the 71% have done, remaining 25 are again there who have not completed their task. So again, there is a chance of improvement. So what is happening, or what is this Amdahl's law is telling you? This formula is used to find out the maximum improvement possible just by improving particular part of a system. So what it means, out of your 70 students, I'm finding that 35 students are best. There is no improvement needed in that. But remaining 35 are there where I need to do something which will improve the performance of my class, which will do all the operations efficiently, and it will be giving me the speed up factor. I hope you all are understanding. Instead of 70 students, you can imagine you are 70 processors and some task is given to you. So till all the processors are not going to complete the task, you cannot go for the next task. This is the condition or constraint given to you. In that case, there is a chance of improvement, and Amdahl is suggesting you try to find out these machines, these processors where you can add these improvement factors. When you are going to improve that, then only you can say that your achievement or your performance is very high and you are going to give very nice speed up operation. This is the statement given by Amdahl. This concept is used in parallel computing to predict the theoretical speed up when using multiple processes. The same example right now in terms of students I am giving you. How it is expressed is shown here. Mathematically, when you want to write this law, it is given like speed up max is equal to 1 divided by 1 minus p plus p divided by s. What this ps is given here? Speed up max is maximum performance gain. Like I want to find out what is the maximum performance gain of your class. I can find out. S is equal to performance gain factor of P after implementation of enhancement. P is equal to the part which needs the performance, or which performance I need to improve. Like example I said, my 50% are working very nicely and 50% need some improvement. So these two factors are S and P here. One example is given here. If the part that can be improved is 30% of overall system, and if this 30% is improved, then the performance of my system can be doubled. This is my constraint. Like this 30% just need improvement. If that 30% is improved, my system performance will be exactly double of the original one. Then what will be the speed up max? It's shown here. The factors. This S is 2 because I'm expecting the performance will be exactly double. The performance gain factor after improvement, I'm expecting it will be double. So it is going to give me 1.18 as a speed up max value. I hope you all are understanding this example. Another example is shown. If I need 70% of the improvement required, and then only the performance can be improved, then my speed up max will be this one. I'm just replacing this S and P values in the law expression given here. S will be what is the performance after improvement I am expecting. In this both example I am expecting this, it will be exactly double. So for that I am putting this 2 value here. P is going to give you what is the improvement needed there. Here in the first example, it is 30%. Second example, it is 70%. So that is shown here. And it is going to give you the speed up max. Again, for your case, you are just needed to concentrate on this slide and the earlier one. No need to go how exactly this can be implemented and all that. That is not part of your syllabus. It is a part need to be studied when in detail you are working with parallel processor systems. Right now we are just concentrating on COA, microprocessor. No need to go in detail of this. Just for your knowledge, you should know what is this Amdahl's law is stating and which are the factors considered here. Just go through these two examples. If any doubt is there, please ask. This is the last slide for today. I'll stop sharing my slides. If anybody has any doubt in today's part, what we have completed today, just say we started with the basic concepts for computer organization and architecture. Various examples in these two categories we have seen. Then we have seen the basic model, born human model. Then we have seen IAS model for this with IR instruction register, MAR, MBR, and that structure. Then we have seen various performance parameters or this for computer performance major factors. And in between, we have seen various control bus structures, data bus, address bus, and control bus. This part we have revised. In the paper, you will get at least 5-mark question on today's part. Any computer organization architecture definitions, example, Amdahl's law, or it can be question on performance major factors for this one, computer architecture. If anybody has any doubt, you can ask me. Meanwhile, let me give you your attendance link and you can mark your attendance for today. Just a minute.